This is an exclusive interview with Stephen A. Smith. And he's now acknowledging he's leaving the door open to run for president. I want to play you this first clip. It's about 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. But I want you to notice while you're watching this clip, look for the editing. Look for signs of editing in this clip where it's like unusual pauses or a little gap. There's two of them in this first. I think this is in the first 2 minutes of Stephen A. appearing on the show. Let's play the clip.
All right, that was Stephen A. Smith, host of ESPN's First Take. He's one of the most, maybe the most listened to sports commentator in America. Lately, he's been talking a lot about politics. And this week, he opened the door to a possible run for president in 2028. So joining me now, Stephen A. Smith. Thank you very much for being here on This Week. So
happy to be here.
We'll get to your possible political future in a second, but you said when Trump got elected, we should give him a chance. How's it going? I mean, what's your take on where Trump is now at day 80 plus?
Well, I don't like what I'm seeing, but I'm not surprised. I mean, this whole tariff war situation is utterly ridiculous. I mean, my attitude is that he should have immediately targeted China and not every nation on the planet, for crying out loud, just throwing tariffs at everybody. Ultimately, he dialed that back, as we saw over the last few days, and folks on the right are up in arms. Basically, I should say, I mean, positively, essentially saying that was the plan all along. There doesn't appear to be a plan. Let's be very, very clear about that. It seems to be a bit very haphazard and, just thrown against the wall to see what will stick. But in the end, what you have to applaud them for is for trying something. We're spending about $2 trillion more, than we're raking in. We're losing our credit rating. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the United States of America financially, economically, that has been, tinkering towards disaster, and somebody had to do something. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, I can understand the need for tariffs, as Senator Elizabeth Warren had articulated. But in the end, what it comes down to is that it does seem to be a bit haphazard right now. And it seemed geared towards large businesses, when we all know small businesses is what makes this country thrive. And I don't see him targeting that nearly enough, but we shall see.
Did you catch it? Did you catch those examples of this clip being edited? I want to make sure I don't want to leave no stone unturned. Guys know I'm the leader of investigating Stephen A. Smith. Early on, like 30 seconds in there's a little gap where I think Stephen A. and they edited the clip, and it's Kamala Harris type editing. And I just think about that. Stephen A. works for ESPN, which is a Disney product. ABC, a Disney product. That throughout this, I think he was on air maybe 9 minutes. Throughout this 9-minute interview with Jonathan Karl on a serious newsmaker show, at no point, the first question out of my mouth would be, hey, Stephen A., you're a sports gabber. You sit on television and talk about sports nonstop. I'm going to assume to do your show properly, you have to watch sports pretty much nonstop. They're paying you $20 million a year to talk about sports nonstop. Stephen A., given all that, given your job, what you've been doing, how hyper-focused you've been on sports, what makes you qualified to be president of the United States? Why isn't that the first question? Why do they go to, Stephen A., what's your reaction to what Donald Trump is doing? And I know that talking about Donald Trump is a cottage industry, and everybody does it at work. Everybody does it around the office water cooler. Everybody does it on chat boards and on X and on Facebook. But when someone is actually running for president, shouldn't you ask them, like, hey, have you really been paying attention to this? Or are you just like every other person on X or every other person on Facebook who's just posting their opinions based on virtually nothing? And, I hate to sound like the guy I was ripping last Friday, Douglas Murray, but, where are the experts? I mean, it's not to have an opinion about politics or Donald Trump. Anybody, any taxpayer has a right and maybe even a duty to express their opinions about what politicians are doing. But when you step up and say, hey, no, I actually want to grab the steering wheel. I want to direct this country. Then that's when I feel like I have a right to go a little bit Douglas Murray and ask myself, you've never been to Gaza? You've never directed anything? I mean, seriously, Stephen A. Smith works at ESPN. He's an employee. It's not like he's run some major company and had 100 people that are direct reports to him, or that he oversees a bunch of people that have direct reports to them. He sits on TV and talks about sports. And now he's flirting with the idea of being president of the United States. This is, I'm going to show you the disconnect. And if you don't get the reference, I was talking about Douglas Murray. He had that interview or that debate with Dave Smith, the comedian, on Joe Rogan's podcast. And he just kept beating up Dave Smith on the point of like, hey, you have no right to have an opinion on what's going on in American foreign policy because you haven't been to this place or that place. And that argument made no sense. But if someone says, hey, I want to fly this plane, and there's going to be 200 passengers on this plane, you then have a right, and it's just natural to say, have you ever flown a plane before? Have you prepared yourself to fly a plane? Those are legitimate, obvious questions. And I don't understand why people are calling themselves journalists and they keep interviewing Stephen A. Smith without ever saying, like, hey, what are your qualifications for being president? You want to grab the steering wheel. Have you ever driven a car? Could we at least, that's a fundamental, basic question. And I get that later in the interview, Stephen A. will make a passing statement about, hey, someone better qualified than me, and I'm only doing this because people are asking me. I'm only doing this because Donald Trump is so bad and Democratic leadership is so bad. Nah, none of that justifies being completely unqualified, completely unprepared, and saying, I want to fly the plane. And so I'm looking at ABC and I'm looking at Jonathan Karl and I'm looking at them edit a Stephen A. interview to make him sound better and maybe cover up some of his ignorance. Because trust me, that interview was edited. There's at least 2 spots in there where they edited Stephen A. Smith. You can hear the gaps. I've got enough experience in this business to see that with my own eyes and hear that with my own ears. But the larger question, or my larger point, is that him being on this show, him being given a softball interview on this show, him appearing on another Disney-owned property and platform is the clearest signal to date that Bob Iger, who runs Disney, wants Stephen A. Smith running for president. And so as the Disney sports gabber who talks on ESPN runs for president, I don't understand why no one in the media has reached out to Bob Iger and said, hey, this is kind of weird. You're paying Stephen A. $20 million to talk sports, and he spends all of his free time talking about, I want to be president. Bob Iger, are you comfortable with this? Are the fact that you've placed Stephen A. Smith on This Week, is that not an indication that you want him to run for president? You want someone who's never been to flight school to fly the plane. Why is that, Bob? These are obvious questions that should be getting asked, and no one's asking them. And that, to me, crystallizes there's a rig job in place, that there are people that there are people of great power and influence at Disney and in the zeitgeist who are propping Stephen A. Smith up, giving him pre-prepared questions, pre-prepared interviews, and edited interviews to try to help him, to try to legitimize his candidacy for president. And so looking at this week interview and how they conducted it and how they edited it, ABC and Disney are completely on board with Stephen A. Smith being a presidential candidate. And when people that powerful, Disney, Bob Iger, that type of, are comfortable and are promoting someone for the presidency, they're generally not doing it because, oh, this has no chance. This is a fly-by-night campaign. And when you're getting this type of cooperation from people in the media, and it's not just Disney and ABC, everywhere Stephen A. Smith has been, including in interviews with so-called conservative, alternative media outlets, they do the exact same thing. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment of Fearless.